Hi everybody, welcome to Commission Structures as a Language. I am Bridget.
And I'm Mary.
And we are really excited to be here with you guys. Thank you for your time. I think this is actually the last session, Discovery Lab session of CJU 2025. So hopefully you've had a wonderful time so far. And we are going to dive in today. What we're really trying to get at with the idea of commission structures as a language is that the way you set commissioning is not just a budgeting topic. It's actually a really powerful way to communicate your goals to your publishers and build really aligned and collaborative and agile partnerships. So one of CJ's greatest strengths is the ability to get really granular and flexible with all of our different commissioning tools. So we are going to get into that today with different scenarios and ways that you can really dive in and utilize these. We have introduced kind of continually over the last couple of years new tools and technologies to help you do this. And so the goal is really that you walk away from this inspired to maybe re-examine your current structures and think about how you can utilize them differently. Not to hammer it home too early, but as a language.
So, as stated before, we are going to demonstrate how to use your program terms as a language, really helping you to guide your publishers to work as an extension of your marketing teams, so together you can reach your goals. We are also going to highlight how different data, CJ's, yours, and publishers comes together to make everything possible. And then finally, we're going to provide you with a 5-step framework so you know how to strategize and implement that new commission structure. So, starting with defining your goal, configuring the setup, running a campaign, analyzing the results, and then finally recapping an outcome so you can tell a really compelling story about how these changes made an impact.
Perfect. So first up, we're going to talk about situational commissioning, or SITCOM. This is a solution that allows advertisers to create unique situations for different circumstances that can then be commissioned on, and these are created utilizing customer data that is passed to CJ via various vertical parameters. So the core benefit here is that it gives you the ability to reward publishers for driving the right or most desirable kinds of customers to your brand. It also just lets you really prioritize how and where your spend is going when it comes to commissioning. So the thing to remember here is I mentioned vertical parameters. That really is key. You have to be passing the information to CJ in order to utilize them to make the different situations. So keep that in mind as we discuss. So we are going to get into our first scenario here. Imagine advertiser X who sells household appliances. They have defined 2 goals for Q3. The first is that they're really focused on driving new customers to the brand. And the second is that they have an array of single-use codes that customers receive when they sign up for their email list. But they've decided that they want to make sure that they're not commissioning on transactions that utilize these codes. The codes all start with hello and then have a unique string of numbers, and that commonality of the hello makes this a perfect candidate to use situational commissioning. So they make sure, again, that they are passing the relevant data. They are already passing customer status and coupon to CJ, so they are all ready to get started by creating a situation for each unique circumstance. So first, a situation for when the customer is new, a second one for when the customer is surprise return, and then finally one for when a coupon contains hello. And then once these situations are created, they're ready to add them into their program terms, into an advanced program term specifically. So after setting their default rate in the situation section, they set the commission for those single-use codes to 0%. It does actually matter that they put this first because they want this to apply regardless of what happens with the customer status assessment afterwards. The new customers are added in at a 12% rate and return customers at a lowered 5% rate. And then they are ready to push these terms out to their publishers. So this requires communication, right? And this can happen in multiple different ways. First, they include information actually in the program term schedule when it's pushed out. And they also send out a newsletter highlighting the changes so publishers are really aware of what's coming. And they also create a code, Welcome 10, for new customers to get off cart price when they make a purchase for the first time to help publishers incentivize customers to purchase for the first time. So truly everyone's goals are being met here at the same time.
Win-win-win.
Exactly. So along the way, as they're analyzing progress, they use our Insights new lapsed and return dashboard to track the changes in new customers, comparing against a previous period to really be able to isolate the jump in new customers during this campaign. And they also run commission detail reporting and make sure that they have the coupon column added so that they can kind of track what's happening with those single-use codes along the way as well. And then they recap their outcomes, and they're thrilled to see that even just in the first month of the quarter, they're having success. They've seen a jump in new customers, and publishers are benefiting from the elevated rates driving those, but because they slightly reduced the rate for return customers, their overall commission spend hasn't actually increased to meet this goal. They also have now partially offset the discount that those single-use codes are allowing by no longer commissioning on top of the discount. And then they have another benefit that they weren't expecting, which is they've been able to identify which of their publishers were most effective at driving new customers specifically. And so they're able to identify a couple of partners that they want to further optimize with and deepen relationships with in the future.
Awesome. So up next, we're going to cover a scenario that touches both item-based and publisher promotional property level commissioning. Item-based commissioning allows you to fine-tune your rates based off of the different type of products that you offer. So for example, product type, product category, product value. So you will require what CJ refers to as an advanced action, which basically just means that you are sending us SKU level data, and then you can also use an item list or a product list to create your different segments of SKUs. Next up, we have promotional property level commissioning, which is a mouthful, so I'm going to now refer to as PID commissioning. This really allows you to set different rates for the different properties working under a single publisher account. So a very common example of this would be different sub-affiliates working under one single account overall. So you can define those rates depending on the value that they bring for your brand. Okay, so we're going to get into our next scenario here. So picture this. A retailer with an upscale clothing brand is poised to drop a new fall collection, and they're really looking for their publishers to drive revenue for that line. And they've also identified a few bloggers working within a sub-affiliate network that align really well with their brand, and they want to optimize with them as well. So they go to configure the setup. They have a fixed set of SKUs, so they opt to create an item list. Once they import those SKUs, they are then ready to create their program terms. So, I'm not there yet. They give it a descriptive name. They call it Luxe Couture, so it's very clear. Then they import the SKUs, and they're ready to create their program terms. So they start off by setting their default rate, which all other publishers will have those rates apply. They set it at 5%, and then add that Luxe Couture line and set it at 9%. And then it's time to set up those rates for the blog partners. So they use that, or they do that using PID level commissioning, where they add the PID values, comma separated, and then they set up their rates. So for those bloggers, their default rate is going to be 7%, and then for the Luxe Couture line, it's going to be 10%. Oh, and one other thing as well. So to increase just how easily those publishers are able to promote that line, they also create promotional links. It helps to increase conversion rate, getting that user closer to the point of conversion. Okay, so up next, they're going to share the details of the campaign. We're going to hit this a couple times. It's very important everyone's on the same page. So they reach out to their entire publisher base using an email campaign. And then they also send direct communication to those bloggers, provide them with those links so they are aware of the increased purchasing power and the increased commission levels that they can achieve. Now, throughout the campaign, they're going to monitor reporting, as always, using Insights reporting, but they're going to pay specific attention to their product SKUs by property so they can see how it changes over time. And then it's time to recap the outcomes. So they were very pleased to see that their overall proportion of new customers has increased during this time. And on top of that, I am losing my place. Oh yeah, so the CMO was so pleased that they have also decided to have a similar campaign for winter, and she's even approved sending those bloggers some of their free product so they can talk about it in their social and on their blogs.
Amazing. Okay, so we talked about situational commissioning, we talked about item-based commissioning, and I'm now going to talk about how you can scaffold these together in what it is going to shock you to learn is called item-based situational commissioning. So the way that this works is the system checks for a relevant situation being passed. If it doesn't apply, then the default rate is applied and any item level rates underneath that. If it does apply, vice versa. I will explain this a little bit more in depth. This is definitely easier with an example. So in the pictured term, you can see there is a default commission rate of 5%. There is a commission rate for the item list books of 10%. And then in the situational area, 8% for a new customer and 15% for a new customer purchasing a book. So to continue visualizing this, at the bottom of the screen here is an example of a query string. If you're not familiar, this is how data is passed to CJ when a transaction takes place. So here, when the customer status is return, it's going to be the default rate that applies. For SKU book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that is on the item list books, so the 10% rate will apply. And then for the remaining SKU, which here is just TV 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, again, that default rate is going to apply. But if the customer status was new, we're now working with the situational rates. So book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will be commissioned at 15% and the rest of the cart at 8%. Like I said, definitely easier with like an actual visualization here because it does get very specific. You can see how intensively you can kind of get down into the nitty-gritty of what you want here. So a scenario, again, imagine a large consumer electronics retailer who fulfills orders across North America. They have decided that due to tariffs in the US, they want to increase their reach in Canada, where their margins are now a little bit higher than they are in the US. And this is particularly applicable to TVs. So they decide to try out a strategy where they're incentivizing publishers who have a strong audience in Canada to promote specifically their televisions. They are already passing the customer country parameter. That's kind of the essential part here. So they're all ready to create the situation. So here they do that. They set the customer country is CAN or CAN. And then once the situation is created, it can go into the first, wow, those item lists and product lists are really getting us. So they actually opt to do a product list because they already have a product feed set up and because their SKUs change semi-frequently. So once the feed has populated the item list, they are now ready to create those program terms. So here they start with an 8% default rate, and so that will apply whenever a customer is not Canadian. And then they apply the situation. So the situation for Canadian customer is there at the elevated 10% rate, and below that, TVs when the customer is Canadian at an even more elevated rate. And then they push it out to publishers. As you can probably tell already from all of the previous examples, we really recommend over-communicating when a commission structure change goes into effect. So they do reach out to some of their publishers who have a strong Canadian audience and do some one-on-one communication. And they also send out a newsletter to their full publisher base, highlighting what is changing and also directly including links to their TVs, again, to just make it very streamlined and easy for the publishers to direct customers right where they want them to go and to benefit from the rates for that. So then they're going to monitor and analyze the performance using a couple of different insights dashboards. So first, in the program overview dashboard, they filter for the Canadian customer situation. They add the TV's product category, and this is how they're going to kind of observe the primary KPIs like ROAS or revenue over time. And then they also use the performance dashboard. So they set the primary dimension to partners and the secondary dimension to product category, and then filter for Canada. So for both of these, they're going to be looking at the current campaign period and also prior periods to really try and isolate the impact that the commission structure change has made on these behaviors. So they find 2 publishers who had an especially successful job doing this. They want to optimize with them further. They start talking to them about potential Q4 placements, and one of those 2 top performers suggests that they might want to try a publisher audience commissioning campaign, which the advertisers never heard of, so they ask what a PIC campaign is.
So we're going to talk about it naturally. So publisher audience commissioning is a type of situational commissioning, but it relies on publisher data as opposed to advertiser data. So some of our enterprise publishers have really rich first-party data about their users, so this unlocks all kinds of new potential in terms of segmentation and targeting. So for example, they can help to target new customers who have never shopped your site before. They can help target very specific demographics. They can target based off of user behavior, so for example, how frequently a user shops. And then finally, this is a big one, they can help with conquesting. So they can identify users who have shopped with your competitors, but not with you, and drive them to your site instead. So how does this all work? First, you and your publisher need to align on a target demographic and a campaign period. At that point, the publisher will provide you with a segment ID that you can then use to create your situation. And then during the campaign, that segment ID is going to be appended after every applicable click, which then triggers the situational rate. So we're going to go back to our example. So that same retailer, electronics retailer, is really hoping to expand even further into the Canadian TV market, and they're wanting to really focus on their share of voice. So they go back and they talk to their publisher and they determine which competitor they're going to try to take shoppers away from, and they decide they're going to work with a 1-month campaign period. So during that time, they're going to offer elevated cashback to drive those customers to their site instead. So the really cool thing about publisher audience commissioning is there's no integration work required. Using geolocating and conquesting data, the publisher will be able to target users who are in Canada and have also recently viewed a competitor offer. So then, like I said, they're going to append that segment ID on every applicable click, and you will be able to then power that in your program terms. So when you go to create the situation, when you choose the situation or the parameter source, you choose publisher data instead and to provide that value that the publisher gave you. So in this case, it is PAC 12345. Once you have that situation created, you can go ahead and create your advanced program terms. You can also layer in that TV product list as well if you'd like to get even more granular. You can tell that is a buzzword for us because this is really what is unlocked here. And once the program terms are created, you can push them to your publisher and the campaign begins. And then during the campaign, of course, you're going to monitor. So we recommend reviewing commission detail reporting, and you can add like the situation parameter in that report so you can see how commissions are tracking, make sure those correct rates are being applied. But then you can also use insights reporting and filter specifically for that situation ID that is created when you set it up. During the campaign, you're also going to analyze those results. So again, coming back to the new lapsed in return dashboard, they're very pleased to see that they have a higher proportion of new customers coming in during this time. They did notice that return on ad spend decreased slightly, which is attributable to their higher commission rates. However, they look at competitive benchmarking, specifically focusing on the cumulative index report. I said that right? I was struggling with that earlier. So they can see how they are growing compared to their competitors in the category. And then once again, the results are in. The CMO was a little bit skeptical due to the decreased ROAS. However, they got like a little bit deeper digging into the data, and overall the results were very exciting. So like I said, new customer acquisition was up during this time. That was one of their biggest goals, so they were happy there. And then looking at that benchmarking reporting, they did see that they were growing faster than their competitors during that period, which was a big win. And also there seemed to be a bit of a halo effect. So 3 months after the campaign concluded, their Canadian performance was up with an even wider publisher base as well.
Amazing. So now that we've looked at our scenarios, it's time to maybe take a step back and consider what your commission structures are currently communicating to your publishers. Are there things you could communicate differently? Are you taking full advantage of the customer data that you're maybe already passing to CJ or could be passing to CJ? So in terms of thinking about, we'll call it a Monday morning action item, first identifying a really specific short and or long-term goal, and then, as I was just saying, consider if your current structures are communicating that goal to your publishers, and if not, what needs to shift or what could shift there to make that more clear?
Mm-hmm. And then the next step will be to connect with CJ to make sure you are passing the relevant data. If you're not sure, our advertiser services team, which will be set up over there, I think, can help you confirm as well.
And then last, you can use our handy dandy 5-step framework that we just showed you guys through our scenarios to kind of put in that implementation of the new structure. And I think something to walk away from this thinking about is really just that affiliate is about constant calibration. And so kind of being able to continually optimize is really a key to building super collaborative, really like aligned partnerships, which is always the goal.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We hope you're having fun at CJU, and we hope you enjoy speaking your new commission language.
Amazing. Perfect.
Does anybody have questions? Dan?
Is there a way to run that and say what will the commissions look like? So you can not like you make a new situational commissioning or something to say how would that have looked last month or something?
So retroactively envisioning that?
So when you're thinking about making a new one, you're like, okay, I want to change this maybe going forward, but what would that have looked like last month?
Like a crystal ball type situation? Yeah. And that's actually a really good question.
It is a good question.
I
would
think
say some of this probably just requires some testing.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to do it retroactively, obviously that would be great because then you could just start fresh with the knowledge, but maybe picking a select group of publishers to test a change with, seeing if that works, and being able to compare. But a good question.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Thank you
Set
so much.
free. Thank you guys.
See you all at the casino.
Yeah. See you later.